For those of you who don't know me, I am Jeff Patton, and I am the last person. Look, I'm not sure I should be here. When they reached out to me, and the conference was called Requirements Engineering, I was thinking to myself, why are you calling me? There's a lot of reasons. From spending just a little bit of time here, I see a lot of people working for very big companies, doing very big complex projects, working on very big complex products, and I never have. I've worked on fairly small products. I started in a fairly small product company. Now, the fairly small product company I started with eventually got bought by Salesforce.com, and it's a division of Salesforce.com. And the small product company I'll work with next week in Sydney is called Atlassian, and some of you work with their products. But I think the stuff that you guys are working with, it feels bigger and scarier to me. So look, the reason I shouldn't be here is because I need to admit that I'm afraid of requirements. Just the word in the title is scary. And I'll try and explain why. Look, speaking here, I would have rather spoke at a conference about snakes or spiders or clowns or other things that I'm afraid of. So I want to take a minute and explain why requirements bother me. And I want to dig in from here. There's 4 parts to this talk, and the first part is a little bit historic, and that'll help me explain my requirements part. It's about failure. So look, I consider myself a product person. What that means is, look, part of the reason I'm known in the Agile community is I started really early. I started with this process called extreme programming in the year 2000. The term Agile was coined in 2001, and I've been working with Agile development ever since. Now, I've been building software a decade before that, working for a small product company, and I worked for product companies after that. These days, I work as a consultant, as a coach, and just as somebody who criticizes people. That's what I do. Now, I want to explain how product development, software development works. I need to get some things quickly out of the way. This will help me explain why requirements bother me. Now, anyone who's read the story mapping book or seen me speak before has seen me draw this model. Here's what I know about software development process. It always starts with an idea or ideas. Those ideas are often for look, if you were a startup, there would be an idea for a whole new product. If you already have a product on the market, those ideas are for features or enhancements or capabilities. Those are the things that we start referring to as requirements. Now, we want to turn those things into software, into technology, into something we can ship. And we want to know how long that's going to take. We want to know how long that stuff is going to cost. And cost, if we're talking about software, is mostly, it's not like a building where it's a lot of raw materials, it's mostly people cost. And then we refer to all this stuff as scope. And everybody's heard of this triangle. This is the bad news triangle. There's nothing good in this triangle. It's bad news because we want to know all this stuff and you can't. Everybody knows how this goes. If I fix time and cost, well, then the bad news is scope is going to go down. If I fix time and scope, well, then the bad news is the cost is going to go up. And because I want to be predictable, and if I fix all 3 of these things, I find about the secret 4th thing, and that is quality. And the bad news is when I fix all 3, quality squeezes out like toothpaste in a toothpaste tube. There's nothing good about this. And this sucks. And most people I'm working with are working on big things and they struggle with this stuff. What's interesting is this is not product development. Product development actually starts upstream. Product development, look, for most companies, unless you're a startup, it starts, I started as a product manager in the 1990s. I worked for a small product company. We had products, and I talked talk directly to my customers. If I talk directly to them, I would usually find customers that were sort of unhappy with me, with us, with our product. I'd find customers that were really unhappy. I'd find customers that were sort of confused and frustrated. And they all had ideas on how my product should be better or changed. Working with them, I had ideas. So look, for me, product management starts upstream, starts in the world as it is now. It starts by paying attention to the product you've got. Now, when I pay attention to the product I've got, I have a lot of choices to make here. But we eventually ship something, and what I hope is true is that those people that were unhappy before are happy now. But people are annoying, and some people are less happy, and some people there's just no pleasing. What I hope happens is these people see what we've built, and they try it, and they use it, and ideally that they keep using it. And I work for a small product company, and we hope that somewhere along here they paid us, and they kept paying their licensing agreements annually. That was super important. Because if enough of them saw, try, used, kept using what we're doing, and actually even better, if they said good things about it, if enough of them did this, then we'd feel it back in our organization. Back in our organization, metrics would start to go up, and we'd get things like return on investment. If lots of people said good things, that's going to help our brand and our brand awareness. And if lots more people say good things and tell other people and more people buy our product, that's going to help our market share. Now, everybody sort of knows this is the way products work. We build stuff, we hope this happens, and we hope our company benefits this way. But I draw this model over and over because people seem to forget this. We use words like goal or objective all the time, and people will say, oh, it's a goal to get this stuff delivered by the end of the quarter. Or they can say it's a goal to increase the number of people who use this product, or for the people that have to use it to help them be more efficient or less error prone, or we can say it's a goal to get return on investment. I break this model up so people start to separate these ideas. It's everything between here and here. That's all output. But what matters is what happens when things come out. The word for that is outcome because of that. And the super annoying thing about outcome is it is measured in things that you cannot control. It's measured not in what you do, but how these people change their behavior. If you notice, every single one of those is a verb. These are things that they have to do. They are not things that you can do. No one in your company can do those things. If you're building a commercial product, even if you're building stuff for internal use, you can actually force people to use it, but you can't force them to like it, and you can't force them to be more efficient using it or less error prone. And that's something that happens if you've done a good job with that software. And the most annoying thing is the stuff your company needs isn't the stuff that they need. If these people are happy, it's because their jobs are easier, they're getting some benefit from using it. If people inside your company are happy, they're happy because they're getting ROI. These people do not care about your ROI. I'm going to use a different word for this. That's this impact stuff. If there's people inside your organization happy or concerned, well, it's normally because they have or don't have the things they need to sustain your organization. Now, I have to draw this over and over. I need people to understand that, look, you're worried a lot about this stuff, but this is actually the hard stuff. And yes, I know your company's telling you need this stuff, but they will not get this stuff unless your users get this stuff. I'm saying stuff a lot. Sorry. Your company will not get what it needs unless your users and customers get what they need. And look, you do have to build something for something to come out. Now, let me pick this apart here. This is how product development works, or this is when I talk about product thinking. That's the model in my head. And what I focus on is good, or I focus on successful products. Now, actually, can someone give me a number? This is the audience participation part, by the way. Can someone give me a number between 1 and 10? I want to get 8 key. Look, when I say successful product, I want to get 8 key elements of a successful product. So when I say successful product, what are things that make a product successful? Give me first words that come to mind. Easy to use. What else? Customers are happy. A couple more. Earns money, solves the problem. Provides value. Value is a tough word. Value can mean these people use it and like it. Value can mean return on investments. In fact, everything over there is the value part. Oddly, nothing in there is. Look, there's a couple more.
Makes people successful.
Yeah, makes people successful. Yeah, it's more popular than competitors. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one more, just so I have 8. Gotta meet the requirements on this. It said 8. I could renegotiate. One more. Good, reliable. Look, fair enough. You can see that everything we're describing here has nothing to do with features or number of features delivered. If I were to ask you to tell me about a product you love, something that you would tell someone about, I can almost guarantee you wouldn't tell somebody, I love this product because it was delivered on time. Or I love this product because it has more features than, maybe more features, but I don't know. Best products aren't always the ones with the most features. Ask anybody who bought a Microsoft Zune. Now, let's continue on from here. Now, I want to come back to this model. I worked for a product company. I was a product manager. It's my job to get all this stuff. We use the word requirements sometimes because I was taught that word in college, but most of the time our company just talked about decisions to make. We knew that to get things right, we were going to have to talk, we need to know who our customers were. We needed to talk directly to customers and talk to users. We needed to find problems, and we needed to think through how they'd work with our product after it was built. Our company, I started there with 30-something people, and we grew to 100 people, and to 200 people, and 300 people. I remember somebody coming to me one day saying, Jeff, I need you to make these changes to the part of the product you're responsible for. I said, great, tell me a little bit about who they're for, who are the customers, and what kind of problems do they have? And she said, well, they're requirements for the next release. And I said, I get it. I just better want to understand who the users are, and I want to think through how they'll work with this after we release it. And she looked at me like I was stupid and said, they're requirements for the next release. That's when I learned that this word actually means shut up. And that's why I sort of have post-traumatic stress disorder over this particular word. Now, I got to tell you, here's what I learned, that I learned fairly early on, that the most annoying part of this model is this stupid idea thing. The problem with ideas, there are 3 big problems with ideas. Problem number 1, and I'm sure you're aware of this, there's always too many. If you talk to any customer or user of your product, they will have ideas on how it can be better. If you talk to any stakeholder inside your organization, they're going to have ideas on how things will be better. If you've got a big product, if it's popular and you have a lot of customers and users, this only makes things worse. More and more ideas. It puts a huge amount of back pressure on this system. It makes you feel like your job is to build more crap and build it faster. Now, here's the real scary part, and this is the tough part. Most of these ideas suck. Now, look, let me see if I can illustrate this. I'm sure I'm going to say some things a lot of you have heard. If you were going to quit your job and start a technology or a tech startup, what are the odds of success? Or more, what is the failure rate of tech startups? Give me a number. 90%. Say again? 70? Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it's not a fair question because I have the answers. I found a couple numbers. Look, anecdotally, a lot of people will say 90-something%. There's a couple sources. A Harvard Business Review article. A startup Genome does annual reports, and they do them by locale and things like that. And look, we're seeing numbers, look, as low as 75% of venture capital funded companies fail to return money to their investors, as high as 92% of startups fail when you look over a 3-year period. This sucks. If you had an idea for a new product, the odds of you being successful, the odds of it being a product that's good enough to sustain your company are pretty low. Now, a weird thing happens. Once you get a successful product in the market, you suddenly start thinking all of your feature ideas are awesome from now on. But I'm sure people have seen this Standish Group report. It's cited a lot by Agile people. It will, look, depending on the year you see the survey, it will classify features. Look, 65 to 75% of features we put into products are rarely or never used. There's a lot of products that just feel like good ideas at the time. Now, this guy's name is Marty Kagan. He's a mentor of mine. He's someone I've known for a long time. I ran into him just before he released his book. His book is called Inspired. If you are going to read one book on product management, read Marty's. Marty has never built a traditional product. He never built something that was hardware. He's always built software. He started at HP. He worked for a guy named Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen at this company called Netscape, and helped grow up Netscape until browsers started to be built into operating systems, and then he went to another startup called eBay. He was hired at eBay when there were about 100 people. He was hired to lead product there, and he led product at eBay up until about 2008. Now, this is the guy that led product management and user experience at eBay, and I remember working with him, and he nonchalantly said to me that if you're really good at this stuff, you'll be right about 75% of the time. Now, I immediately inverted the number. I just said it wrong. Back up, rewind. He said, if you're really good at this stuff, you're going to be wrong 25% of the time. Or you're going to be wrong 75% of the time. You're going to be right a quarter of the time. Now, the numbers get all jumbled in my head because when he said this really low success rate, my head freaked out. And I said, look, you mean if I'm good, I'm going to be wrong most of the time? If I'm good, I'm going to be wrong 3/4 of the time? And he said, well, only if you're good. Most people aren't that good. And the quote that he would let me put in a slide was that typically 50 to 80% of the software we ship fails to accomplish its objectives. Now, look, if any schmo were to say that, that's something. But if the person who leads product at eBay says that, that means a bit more. That means this is a person who's been shipping features and enhancements into a thriving product for a decade plus, and that's what they're saying. So look, this is a problem. It doesn't matter how good at this stuff we get, we're wrong a lot. Now, this leads me to the next part here. Look, I started with software development in the 1990s. And we were sort of wrong a lot. We thrashed, we struggled, we didn't know how well we were doing. We only paid attention to whether we made money. We didn't have good ways to pay attention to this stuff. But by the year 2000, we're kind of getting the idea that we're wrong a lot. And well, it's about now that we see two competing ideas on how to do things better. Competing idea number one here is, well, this Agile software development. And look, in Agile software development, I was working at a company doing this XP stuff in 2000. The term Agile was coined in 2001. And I found out I was doing an Agile process. And look, a key characteristic of Agile development is it's going to suck, so just ship it. And you see values in the Agile Manifesto like, look, working software over comprehensive documentation. I don't care how good those requirements are, just build something and let's see it. You see things like responding to change over following a plan, which sort of says, once we start seeing things working and you start testing it, you're going to see that's not the right thing. And you see principles like our highest priorities to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Like Agile development is about shipping. Now, this guy's name is Kent Beck. He wrote this book called Extreme Programming Explained. This is this XP stuff. I told you I started with a company in 2000. That was the consultant my company hired in 2000 to help us learn this process. It was cool because he wrote this book. There's been a couple editions of this book. Look, I'm going to flip open a page of this thing here where he introduces this concept of stories. How many people are using stories? How many people are using an Agile process around here? It's not everybody here. Okay, how many for the people using who is familiar with this concept of stories? Who's using stories in their work environment? Okay, it was almost more than using Agile. Who hates to raise hands in talks? So good. Look, in introducing the concept of stories, Kent said software development has been steered wrong by the word requirement, defined in the dictionary as something mandatory or obligatory. The word carries a connotation of absolutism and permanence, inhibitors to embracing change, and the word requirement is just plain wrong. Now, what he's saying, what he's talking about is this idea that you can deliver everything that's required and people will still not use it. You can deliver a fraction of what's required and end up with something wildly valuable. That when the dictionary definition of the word required means you need it. But when we talk about this from a business or a value perspective, not so much. We don't know. And look, he used this term in talking about stories. And when I asked him where this concept of stories came from. He said, look, what I was thinking of was the way users sometimes tell cool stories about the cool new things their software does. Now, we gave him this example of I type in a zip code or a postcode, and it automatically fills in the state or zip. He said, I think that was the example that triggered the idea in my head. If you can tell stories about what the software does and generate energy and interest and vision in your listener's mind, then why not tell stories before the software does it? Now, by now, you should recognize what he's saying is talk about this stuff. Talk about the outcome. Talk about what people will do. Now, I guess I can call all that stuff value, too. That's good enough. Now, out of Agile development, out of this, we get this extreme focus on quality. We're going to build working software. It's going to need to change a lot. So we want to make sure that every part of it is potentially shippable, or it's done and potentially shippable so that we could, in fact, put it in place. Because it's going to change a lot and we want the quality to be high, we're going to use things like test-driven development. We're going to automate our regression testing. We're going to automate our build and deploy process. And we're going to really focus on the quality of design and our craftsmanship. And this is the stuff that allows us to build software and be wrong and fix it and change it fast. Now, when I hear all that Agile stuff, look, I love Agile development for a lot of things, but when I hear that just build it and ship it thing, I get my stomach starts to turn. I've shipped a lot of crap, and I've suffered from my business has suffered the consequences of stuff that I've shipped that was a bad thing. And just build it and ship it and see what happens just didn't feel good to me. Now, I want to talk about, I said, look, there were two competing ideas here right around this 2000 time frame. Look, one of the other things that's emerging right around here are product design concepts. We're starting to see things like interaction design, and people heard this design thinking thing before? Anybody? I know that outside of Berlin is the HPI School of Design. It is a fairly big thing in Germany. First design thinking book was published in 2009, and but look, right around 2000, we're seeing a lot of traditional design approaches to this. And when we talk about a traditional design approach, what it means is we do research on who these people are. We get data or information. We prototype. We test those things. And right around in 2001, one of the people that had been working like this through the 1980s and 1990s is this guy. You need to know who this guy is. Now, what he talked about, what Frank Robinson talked about, was that, look, there's a bunch of stuff we need to do in order to be right. If you just build everything that people ask for, well, that's a lot of scope, a lot of time, really expensive. Your product gets to market late. That doesn't guarantee success. If you really limit those things, you run the risk of building something that is not enough. The trick is to get it just right. And what he said is, look, what we are shooting for and what we're trying to do with all that research and prototyping and testing to get to market fast, we are shooting for the smallest product or release that can meet its desired market outcomes. Now, look, this is the definition for a term he referred to as minimum viable product. Does anybody work in a company that uses this term MVP or minimum viable product? Does it mean that or anything like it? Now, look, he coined this definition in 2001. This is what Robinson meant. And there's some tough things about this. First off, you sort of need to agree on your desired market or who this product is for. Easiest example I can use is something like an iPhone. Did anybody have an iPhone in the 2008, 2009 time period? Anybody have a first release of an iPhone? And so look, for that first release of an iPhone, what major customer segment or group of customers was that product not for? Who couldn't use an iPhone? Anybody know? Anything come to mind? Look, in 2008, I was working for this company called Barclays Global Investors. I was working with people who are stock portfolio managers and stock traders. And the iPhone came out. It was awesome. Everybody loved it. And they rushed right out and bought an iPhone. Now, their company would not let them use an iPhone because it didn't have the security requirements. It didn't connect to their legacy email platform. There's a lot of things they couldn't do on it. And there were a lot of security issues mostly. So their company, Barclays, wouldn't let them use it. Most large governments or large corporations wouldn't let people use an iPhone at that time. What did they have in their other pocket? Yeah, BlackBerry, because that tied up that BlackBerry had that market. So look, Apple didn't say, oh my gosh, we forgot about large corporations. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a missed requirement. It was a deliberate product decision. The hardest choices we make from a product perspective aren't what features or capabilities go in that product. They're what customers and users we are not going to satisfy and which ones we are. And that's the heart of product strategy. Now, meeting its desired outcomes, we need to agree on who, and by outcomes, when he said viable, what he meant was successful. Specifically, he meant ROI. That's what we get. Now, we got these two ideas where you have to do a lot of research and prototyping testing, but this is the stuff that Agile development started to demonize as big design up front. If we do this stuff, it's going to be like the bad old days, the 80s and 90s, when we spent a lot of time doing this stuff, and then things didn't work out. Now, I want to fast forward another decade here. We had, for a lot of people during the 2000s, I was using mixtures of design processes and mixtures of Agile processes. That's the stuff I've been championing all throughout starting the minute I discovered Agile development and realized there's a lot of awesome things here, but a lot of things that aren't working. Now, let me get to the third part of this talk. Look, in spite of starting to use being a lot better at design, in spite of being a lot better at Agile development, we still suck. Those startup genome reports or those startup failures are not 2001 or 2005 failure rates. Those are 2015 failure rates. Those things about features rarely or never used, those are true today. Who here uses a tool like Jira? Out of curiosity? That's a lot. So look, if you use a tool like Jira, you know what a product looks like that has 65 to 75% of its features that are rarely or never used. Atlassian went through this time period of saying, hey, we're going to listen to our customers and put in the stuff they want the most. And there's an old saying that if you improve a product long enough, you'll eventually ruin it. And they're really struggling right now trying to get features out of that product, trying to simplify it, trying to make that product easier to use. And it's super hard. It's super bloated. And it's hard for them to, everything gets used a little bit. If they'd been paying attention as the product grew, they would have pulled features off sooner. Now, I need to tell you about this guy. This guy becomes sort of important in 2010, 2011. Has anybody heard of this guy, Ries, before? Okay, you need to because he's important. Now, what's different about Ries is he's a young guy. He never once shipped software in a box or in a seat on a CD or shipped a big release of an on-premises product, because by 2010, when he's doing this stuff, software is sort of internet-based, and we can release big products on the internet. By then, we've got people like Salesforce.com, which are actively competing with SAP. But by then, we've got big applications that are web-based. Eric was the CTO of this company, IMVU. Has anybody ever heard of this company before? I'm looking for one hand. Often there's one. Look, you wouldn't have. This product sucks. He's the CTO of this product. And he shipped this product using Agile development processes. They were really fast. They delivered high-quality stuff really fast. And he learned very quickly that the faster you deliver crap, the more crap you get. And no amount of delivering fast was helping this company come up with a product that people wanted, would keep using, and would sustain their organization. Now, on his board of directors was this guy, Steve Blank. Steve Blank had written a book early in the year called 4 Steps to Epiphany, early, I think around 2009, 2010. And what Steve described, well, he gave away some trade secrets. He described the kinds of things companies like eBay and Netflix and Amazon and PayPal and others had been doing. He talked about the work we do to validate we're selling to the right customer, the work that we do to make sure that people want our product. And look, there's a core concept in here that you need to understand. That's called validated learning. Let me draw this quickly. Now, if you were going to build and release a product, look, if you were doing this in an Agile context, and I'm used to that, you might start with that idea, and in an Agile context, you would turn this into a backlog. But you still do this same thing with validated learning. But this backlog is not filled with features or enhancements. This backlog is filled with stuff that scares you. It's filled with risks or assumptions or just questions. Because, look, if you're going to build a product, it's important to be predictable. It's important to say how much you can get done in a certain amount of time. But even riskier is the fact that you're actually solving these people's problems, the fact that people will actually see it and try it and use it and keep using it, and the fact that, that enough people will do that you'll make money. You're betting on a lot of things when you're betting a product. It isn't just that you can get it built on time. So we look at all those things as things that could go wrong. Like all backlogs, the important thing is the stuff at the top or the riskiest assumption. If I pull out that riskiest assumption, let's say the riskiest assumption is we really understand the problems we're solving, or the riskiest assumption is that people will actually buy it, or that people can easily learn how to use it, or that when they use it, they'll actually be more efficient or effective. Look, if I can figure out what that riskiest assumption is and sort of turn it into a question, do people want it? Do I understand the problem they're solving? Can they easily learn how to use it? Then what I need to do is figure out the smallest thing I can do to answer that question. And the result of that is to build a test. Now, this isn't a test to see if it meets the requirements. Actually, it is a requirement that people want it and keep using it. And we can use that word, just like the word goal can stretch to fit anything. I can call anything a requirement. And things like usability, things like performance, those are all non-functional requirements. And maybe business requirements are that we get ROI on this thing. Now, writing up a requirement that you're going to get ROI on something, that's tough. Look, if we build a test, then what we're going to do is take it out, and usually we have to put it in front of somebody, and we'll maybe observe what happens, or what we get back from that test is data. We do not get back return on investment. We don't get back happy customers. We don't get back any of the things that our organization needs. We might have somebody happy with an element of our product, but we did not build a whole product. But what we did is learn something that lets us change the idea, change our assumptions. Now, Steve Blank described this model in his book, 4 Steps to Epiphany, and I'm pretty sure nobody here has read that book, 4 Steps to Epiphany, have they? Oh, you have. Was it good? You did like it? You're one of the few people who did. I have. Yeah. I'm gonna. Yeah. I need to give you a piece of trivia. You guys can. I'm just going to talk to her for just a second. Look, Steve Blank wrote this book called 4 Steps to Epiphany. It was a self-published book. If you read a paper version of that book, you saw the margins were weird. It was printed all the way out to the edge because he didn't have a proper editor, and he released it really quick. And part of the reason he released it really quick is because he was describing this way of working, and he was an executive at a company, and even as an executive, they would not listen to him. They wouldn't do this stuff. They wouldn't do almost everything in that book. Any ideas what company Steve Blank worked for? He worked for that company, and then he said, I've had it, and he left, and he wrote that book. The company was called Epiphany. And it's easy to look up. I know people that worked with him. And when you leave a company and write a book called 4 Steps to Epiphany, let's say you work for Daimler, and you're pissed off, and you leave, and you write a book called 4 Things That Daimler Should Have Done. They'll know what you mean. Everybody knew what Steve meant. You guys suck and I hate you. That was what this book, the real subtitle of the book. All right, there's your trivia for the day. But most people say, the book was kind of a hard read. Now, Steve was on Eric Ries's board of directors, and one thing that Eric Ries has a gift for is really simplifying concepts. He simplified this whole concept into a simple mantra, and that mantra is build, measure, and learn. But one thing that Eric Ries does not have a gift for is naming things. First off, when people hear this word build, they think you mean build software. But what Eric Ries meant is you build a test. And when you say the word measure, people think that you're deploying something and getting data. But it might mean you're just observing someone taking a usability test. And that's not the kind of thing you might be thinking. So build may not mean build, measure may not mean measure, but at least learn means learn. Now, one of the other things, Eric had been using an Agile process. Agile processes usually work in these short cycles that are weeks. But one of the things he learned is you can get around this cycle fast, sometimes in hours, often in days. But if it's really long, it could be a week or weeks. But the point is it's not fixed. You would never fix this to a sprint or a week or 2 weeks or anything like that. The goal is to watch this cycle time to reduce it. Now, there's got to be people in the room that are familiar with this concept of lean thinking, correct? Okay, I would expect there's almost as many as would be familiar with Agile stuff. But this concept of reducing cycle time is an element of lean thinking. If you're familiar with lean thinking, there's a lot more to lean thinking than reducing cycle time. There are a lot more principles there, but look, this is the only one Eric really latched onto. And Eric also happened to be working for a failing startup. So his book was titled Lean Startup. Now, what's interesting is it's not very lean. It only uses a little bit of lean. And this validated learning concept is not for startups. It's for everybody. So lean startups, not lean, not for startups. Now, to add insult to injury, Eric does this other weird move in 2011, where in the context of that book, Eric Ries says, hey, it's 2011. We don't have to release big releases. We don't have to worry about whether all the features in the box actually work. We can move our focus to this test thing. And what we should be focusing on is the smallest thing we can do or make to test a product hypothesis. Now, hypothesis, if it doesn't look familiar, is the scientific word for guess, and we start by guessing, and then we figure out what our risks are, and we go through this loop. Now, Eric Ries, in the context of this book, redefined this as an MVP. This is a big problem. The big problem is Robinson defined it in 2001, and when he said product, what he meant was product. And when he said viable, what he meant was successful, or it earns money. A viable product was one that will land in the market and survive and thrive and earn money for your company. That's what viable meant. But when Eric used this for MVP, when he said product, what he meant was test. And when he said viable, what he meant was that you learn something. This is a big problem. These definitions are not subtly different. These definitions are polar opposite. And now we got this really nasty problem where no one knows what we're talking about when we say MVP anymore. And that's why MVP definitely doesn't mean this in your company. And it's partly because Eric sold more books. Actually, Robinson only wrote articles and did a lot of consulting, but Eric has sold 1 million+ books, translated in a bunch of different languages. And look, I get a lot of credit for this story mapping thing, and I point out to people, I didn't invent it. There's a lot of people doing this stuff, but I coined a term that was sticky, and I sold more books, so I win. I invented story mapping, and Eric gets credit for inventing the MVP, even though he cites Robinson. So look, I will look at this as the smallest successful release. And the way we get to smallest successful release is by identifying next best tests. Where are we? I wanted to show a couple examples, and I've got to start. Look, I had an hour. I need to start to cap this stuff off. Now, look, there's a bunch of things that become risks, and I want to show you what next best tests look like. Look, if your biggest risk is we understand people and understand their problems, the fastest way to learn is to go where people are and see what their problems are. The tall guy on the right works for a company called Kodak, and yes, they're still in business. He is responsible for a kiosk that you'd see in grocery stores or pharmacies where you bring in a USB stick or your camera, you plug it in, and you get a high-resolution picture out of it. They have those in Germany. Have people seen these before? That's the guy that's been responsible for those for years. Guy on the left is a user experience person, is more of a researcher. Guy behind the guy on the right is a team member. Short, white-haired person is not on their team. She's been trying to get a picture out for the last hour. Now, this guy's got a big backlog. He's got a lot of demands on him to put things into this product to increase the number of pictures that people print out, to put pictures on coffee mugs or print posters. And he comes back after a day of doing this and says, look, this has been so I was there. He said, this has been the worst day of my life. Said, I never realized how much damage I was inflicting on people. And no wonder it's so hard for us to sell, to up them and have them do other things, because it's just so painful to get the first picture out. The likelihood of them wanting to get more pictures out, that's why would you want to suffer more damage? He realizes his problems are other things. If we're trying to answer the question, do we understand the problems we're solving, it's just going to where people use your product. Guy on the right is responsible for a line of portable printers. The guy on the left is from China. He designs portable printers. The guy in the middle takes pictures of you and your family in front of the Gateway Monument in Mumbai for 30 rupees. That is his portable printer. When this guy on the left has to deal with non-functional requirements that have to do with durability or how it performs in heat, going back to his office in China, after having spent multiple days with people at 30-degree temperatures in India, he thinks about non-functional requirements a little bit differently. Now, look, I have a lot of people, a lot of examples of sitting with people as they do their work so that we can learn things. And if we're trying to understand the problems we're solving, that's a good way to do it. Now, if you want to understand if people want your product, or I'm going to kind of conjoin this idea of wanting your product and testing whether they can easily use it, this is a lightweight usability test, maybe. Has anybody seen a paper prototype that works like this before, out of curiosity? So just so a few, look, this is a paper prototype. The guy on the right is a computer. You can tell that's his memory in front of him. Person on the left, she's a user. She's using a fairly sophisticated UI that allows her to map things by kind of using the mouse to drag and drop. So when she maps that, map it. I can't wait. Do it. The line magically appears on the screen. That's how that works. Now, this may seem like trivial software, but these people work for HP. Their product is called StorageWorks. It's for managing rooms full of disk arrays in data centers. What she's doing is mapping customers to logical units. See, this is the funny part. She tries to save it, and he hasn't enabled the button yet. And she thinks that's hilarious that he has to do that. Now, whether people want their product isn't a challenge. They do. They use it. But what people complain about is the usability of this mapping stuff. And look, for them to prototype ways of doing this that were easier to use, it takes to create a sophisticated prototype is going to take a while, but they can iterate through many ideas in an afternoon and then start to refine the ideas that work. They know they've got a product where that UI sucks, and they can learn a lot faster doing that. That's how we get around build, measure, learn cycles fast. Now, a couple more here. Look, this guy is from TripAdvisor. He's the founder of TripAdvisor. And he's describing something, well, this video is from 2011. One of the things they used to help bring up TripAdvisor was, well, something called a 404 test. I'm going to let him say what that is. I am.
Is there, what are maybe some of the, if you have it, like some of the top piece of advice you might give, things you've learned or?
Yeah, I've learned, for at least in a web-based, a consumer-facing web-based business, there's nothing like running a little test on the website itself to say what do your visitors really want, and the notion of doing a quick test solves umpteen meetings worth of powerful debate and logical arguments. So at TripAdvisor, we've for quite some time done these things called 404 tests. And HTTP 404 error, it's a link, it's broken, it gives you an error. And I'm a fan of, look, you want to test whether consumers want to sign up for a weekly newsletter on ski vacations? Hey, go put a link, before you build the darn thing, go put a link on your ski pages that says, sign up for our ski newsletter.
So it's a 404 test because you literally just redirect your 404s to this?
No, you put the link, you market it any which way you want on the site, the most compelling call to action, sign up, great ski newsletter. But before you actually spend the energy to design and build the product that you're actually going to deliver, in this case a newsletter, you put it on the site for an hour or a day and you see how many people click it. It goes nowhere. It says broken link to the user.
I see.
Your log file says how many people clicked on it.
Yeah.
And the marketing pushback I got when it was first introduced is, how can you do that to your customers? You're putting a broken link on your site deliberately. And I'm like, look, almost all the visitors' site, when they find a broken link, they're going to blame their internet connection, not me.
Yeah.
And what's the worst that can happen? 1,000 people or 5,000 people can hit that broken link, and you're pissed off as a marketeer because we've disappointed 1,000 people. I'm high-fiving it all over the place because with a 10-minute test, I found some great usability, some great user feedback that says they want this feature.
Or and you maybe avoided disappointing far more people, right?
Obviously, in the other direction, if nobody actually clicked on it, then all the debate about whether it's a great idea or not is out the window. We couldn't market it on our own site. If we can't do that, I'm not interested as a feature.
Look, he coined that term 404 test, but these days we don't actually release a 404 error. We'll use A/B testing frameworks. We might put something in the product for a short amount of time, measure how many people click it, and meter it and shut it off before too many people get frustrated. Look, this is a common thing we do. We commonly test things that may not work in a product. Let me expand on that. Look, people have heard this term DevOps before. Look, one of the things, This guy's name is John Jenkins, and he cited this number in 2011 at a conference because he works for Amazon. He's responsible for the stack. And this number of, look, at Amazon, we release every 11.6 seconds. I've seen a lot of talks on DevOps, and that 11.6 seconds number gets tossed out a lot. I don't know if people have heard that. Anybody heard that number before, out of curiosity? Look, you got to know that at Amazon, when they release software every 11.6 seconds, it does not mean they are releasing new features in their product every 11.6 seconds. They are doing a ton of little tests. They are doing things like feature fakes. They're doing things like testing one small feature and iterating it with a small audience until they're sure it is awesome. What that capability is used for isn't releasing features fast. What that capability is used for is learning fast. Now, we put one last cap on this here. Has anybody seen this visualization before from this guy named Henrik Nieberg? He says, look, if you've got this idea for a product like this transportation device, and you believe if you build it, people are going to use it and love it, and your company's going to make a lot of money, he makes a suggestion, it gets used by the Agile community a lot, that you ship something crappy, something that's this skateboard is a crappy transportation device, and then see how the market responds. And then you look, if people complain that they fall down on that thing, you can say, look, I fixed the falling problem. We've turned this into a scooter. And people say, well, I've got a lot farther to commute. And we say, well, we fixed the distance problem. And if your target market is the Netherlands or Portland, Oregon, you've nailed it. But if your target market is Southern California, you got it farther to go and traffic is bad. And you iterate it until you find where viable is. Now, a lot of people see that and say, that's the way we come up with small releases, is we release things and we know what people think would be awesome, but we cut it way back. And they start to refer to MVP as that thing that's cut way back. Well, it sort of is, but hey, how many people work at companies where they don't call teams anymore, where they call them squads? Anybody work at a company adopting the Spotify model? Henrik is known for these Spotify engineering culture videos, and I'm going to play just a minute or so of this part of Spotify engineering culture video. I want you to listen for the word MVP, and I want you to be aware that MVP does not mean a release that goes to everybody. I want you to pay attention to who it goes to and what is not included in it.
Our product development approach is based on lean startup principles and is summarized by the mantra, think it, build it, ship it, tweak it. The biggest risk is always building the wrong thing. So before deciding to build a new product or major feature, we try to inform ourselves with research. Do people actually want this? Does it solve a real problem for them? Then we define a narrative, kind of like a press release or elevator pitch, showing off the benefits. For example, radio you can save or follow your favorite artist. We also define hypotheses. How will this feature impact user behavior and our core metrics? Will they share more music? Will they log in more often? And we build various prototypes and have people try them out to get a sense of what the feature might feel like and how people react. Once we feel confident this thing is worth building, we go ahead and build an MVP, minimum viable product. Just enough to fulfill the narrative, but far from feature complete. You might call it the minimum lovable product. The next stage of learning happens once we put something into production, so we want to get there as quickly as possible. We release the MVP to just a few % of all users, and use techniques like A/B testing to measure the impact and test our hypotheses. The squad monitors the data and continues tweaking and redeploying until they see the desired impact. Then they gradually roll out to the rest of the world, while taking the time needed to sort out practical stuff like operational issues and scaling. By the time the product or feature is fully rolled out, we already know it's a success, because if it isn't, we don't roll it out. Impact is always more important than velocity, so a feature isn't really considered done until it has achieved the desired impact. Note that, like most things in this video, this is how we try to work, but our actual track record, of course, varies.
I want you to hear what MVP means there. Doesn't mean a release to everybody. They start using the term MVP when they actually do release something, but it's to a small percentage of people. I'm going to summarize. I was actually at Spotify and I took a picture of that sign on the wall, and someone had vandalized it when I was there. if you can see that. Look, we ship less than perfect solutions, not to everybody, but to a small subset of customers. We do that so that we can learn. These things are not built at scale. At Spotify's scale, that's thousands of people, not millions of people, not localized into a bunch of different languages. The bar is much, much lower for those things. We iterate those over and over until it's awesome. We're not afraid, or they're not afraid to kill things. They kill tons of things that just aren't good ideas. But the one thing they do not do is scale it, not right away. There's a mantra that comes from product people. That is this nail it before you scale it mantra. And one of the things I deal with in most organizations is teaching them how to stop building ideas they're not sure of at scale. Spotify doesn't, Amazon doesn't, Netflix doesn't. It's not the way a consumer product company or a commercial product company does this. Now, I'm going to be 5 minutes over. Let me tell you, let's wind a couple things up. What we're starting to rediscover here is an old idea. Has anybody ever heard of this old paper from these Japanese guys, Takeuchi and Nonaka? It's called the New Product Development Game. And what this is written in 1986, and what they talk about is the way companies like Fuji and Canon and Honda and Epson and Brother build things like copiers and computers and cars, or an engine for a car, and they talk about the way they do things. They talk about iteratively prototyping and testing things and how we layer different types of prototypes over and over and over to design these physical products. And in this paper, they talked about how chaotic things were and how cycles working in linear cycles didn't work and overlapping cycles did. And they said, look, what it looks like is, it looks like these people are playing a team sport. It looks like they're playing rugby. And look, years ago, the creator of this Agile process, Scrum, read this paper, and he said, this stuff is awesome. We need to do more of what's in here. And he pulled things like self-organizing teams and lots of other mantras that come out of this paper. Now, the ironic thing here is this paper is not about potentially shippable software, because you do not build a little bit of a potentially shippable engine or a potentially shippable car or a copier or anything like that. You build prototypes and tests. This paper is about that build, measure, learn cycle. Now that we start to understand that, now that we start to reclaim it, now that we start to work with software that way, look, this is the point I'm trying to get to. Things have changed, and software products have changed. This guy is Mark Andreessen. He wrote an article years ago called Why Software is Eating the World, and he made this prediction that software will eat the world. And he was also, look, in 2011, he was kind of wrong. It's not just software that's a part of everything. It's the internet and it's computers. Now, computers aren't things on desks anymore. They're things in phones. They're things on iPads. There's in a car. There are dozens of computers. And when we talk about a product today, what makes a product today different is everything is a computer. We know that phones are computers. Years ago, when I had a phone, if I wanted to do something different, I bought a new phone. But now my phone does something different all the time. Look, watches aren't watches anymore. Watches are computers. Does anybody have light bulbs that aren't light bulbs anymore? Or vacuum cleaners that aren't vacuum cleaners anymore, that are computers. From home, I can set the temperature in my house in the United States from here. It's super annoying to my wife, but I can. Now, sorry, if you've got a security system, these are now Internet of Things devices. They're not heavy installation. They work differently, and now people use them to keep their houses safe and watch their dogs when they're at home. I've worked with many game companies, but game companies are freaking out. Games used to be these things that you would spend a lot of time building and try to get them awesome and ship them, but now games are these things that come out kind of crappy and continuously change and evolve. Everybody Everybody knows what the biggest game in the market right now is, the one that's freaking out game manufacturers. It's a game that releases in seasons and started with crappy, simple versions and gradually built over time. And this one just released recently. It caused Electronic Arts or EA's stock to go up 10 points in the first week it was released. And it's a free game. It's free because they earn money from it being used. Now, look, we know that TV is not TV anymore. TV is the biggest media companies, the people who produce the most television shows and movies these days, the people investing millions in them are people like Amazon and Netflix. And we know you're in Germany, of all people that understand that cars aren't cars anymore. It's you guys. If you bought a Tesla 4 years ago, you will check on Tesla's website. You can see the upgrades that your car is still getting today. Your dashboard will change frequently. I drive German cars. I had a BMW. For the 5 years I owned it, never once did I get a dashboard upgrade. I just bought a new Porsche. And the cool thing about the Porsche is the navigation system and the entertainment system on my new Porsche is freaking awesome because it was not made by Porsche. Because it's integrated with another product that actually does have a freaking awesome intelligence or entertainment system. And there are lots of those. But my car is, even though it's a Porsche, I'm still not going to get upgrades that increase the speed. This is the way a technology product looks today. Like, one last trick question for you. We're going to start to tie this up here. How much does a Rolls-Royce jet engine cost? Somebody may know this answer. We're in Germany. Say again? Yeah, you don't buy them. They're free. You pay for them by the hour. And that whole notion, and if you look at Rolls-Royce vision for this thing, we're not talking about an engine. We're talking about an Internet of Things, an engine that is filled with lots of computers, that knows what it's doing and knows when it's wearing out, that continuously sends data back to Rolls-Royce, that tells Rolls-Royce when it needs to be repaired, and Rolls-Royce only makes money when that engine is being used. It's in the air. And look, that is what is it? That business school, that Wharton Business School study talks about how this is fundamentally changing the model for people who do things like this. So we know that lots of products have been eaten by software. So let me ask you this last question, and I want to tie this up. When I talk about what a successful product is today, what makes a product successful today? If you're looking at all those products, give me the other things those products have. Yeah, say that again? Yeah, they're connected. What else? What are characteristics of all those products? Well, they're up to date. By up to date, can I paraphrase here? Do they change routinely? To a point where they might be always new. Say that again? They evolve, yes. They evolve. There's no big releases that take 9 months. That's not the way those things work. They continuously change. When was the last big release of Amazon or Netflix you saw? This is not the way they work. What else did I hear? Did anybody say anything? Look, these evolve. They're connected. I'm going to add a couple others because I'm so freaking late. Look, they're integrated with each other. They continuously change. And how do they know to continuously change? How does Netflix or Amazon or Spotify know when their product isn't working? Say it again? Yeah, well, they learn. How do they learn? Do they go out to your house and hang around and watch you? Look, I'm going to keep fishing here. They've got data. And they don't have data on how many, like every company has data on how many people bought their products. They have data on how many people see, try, use, keep using, and pay for it. Not just those things. When we talk about a contemporary product today, these are continuously evolving, changing things. I work with companies that make these kinds of products. The cycles are much faster than they ever were. Now, I'm going to throw the last key punch points here, that if you've got a product today, we invest in continuously learning from the products that we've got. We need data. We design for a small continuous release. We need data. We complement data with face-to-face interaction. There's an old bad saying about data, that data tells you what happened but not why. We don't just identify stuff and ship it. We create hypotheses and we respond with tests. Then when we are confident, like Henrik Nieberg said, when we're confident we're going to get the outcome we want, then and only then do we respond at scale. I'm going to end with a Jeff Bezos quote, because look, this is a guy that is the richest person on this planet. And he understands a little bit about process. I'm going to give him a little bit of credit. And his point is that, look, process serves us. We don't serve process. The process is not the boss of you. If there's one person focused on outcomes, if there's one person that's good at building products with the characteristics we're talking about, well, that's one of them. All right. That's where I need to end. I'm late. I don't know if we have time for questions. I know you've got to do some stuff to wrap up. Thank you very much for staying late. Thanks.